G'day and welcome back to Critical AFL on YouTube. Today we're going to be discussing one of the less visible pieces to the West Coast Eagles Football Club, but an incredibly important one, the WAFL. After the WAFL Eagles fell short in a really competitive performance that included some really strong individual efforts from players banging on the door for a spot in the AFL squad. Today's video will cover who our best players were, who might be pushing for a spot in the AFL side, key takeaways and why I think the WAFL side is going to be much better this year. And finally, my predictions for next weekend in both the WAFL and at the selection table for the AFL side based on the WAFL performance this weekend. But first, before we get started, as always, I'd like to humbly request to anybody watching this channel who isn't a subscriber yet to please hit that subscribe button if you feel you would enjoy more content like this. As I've mentioned before, this channel won't be monetized until it reaches YouTube's minimum requirement of 1,000 viewers. And until this point, squeezing time in to consistently produce videos like these when they're expected from everyone is really just a very time-consuming passion of mine, as I always say. But anyway, let's go to the feature of today's video. And on Friday night at Mineral Resources Park, Matt Flynn and Luca Grego led an Eagles WAFL side that was stacked with AFL-listed players, I think 13 or 14 this time round, which is a far cry from the last couple of years with the injury crisis, to a valiant defeat that really could have gone our way in the fourth quarter, especially if we'd just been a little bit more accurate. Unfortunately, just for everyone's information, I wasn't able to get the game streaming until the second half. I put a post out on Friday at the time to see if anyone else was able to get 7+ working for the game in the first half, just because it didn't work at all the week before. There's an error message, and then suddenly, just bam, the error message went away and the coverage began for the entire second half. So between the stats and the second half that I watched, however, I did get a really good feel for the game and how everyone played. So pretty confident and comfortable with everything I'll be saying in this video. Just a little disclaimer. Also, if anyone did get it working in the first half, please comment and tell me, because I'm pretty sure the issue is channel 7 and 7 Plus at the moment, just because last weekend all the other WAFL games worked except for West Coast. Anyway, like I said, back to the game, our best player out there had to be Matt Flynn, and this was for the second week in a row now. Flynn racked up an enormous 49 hit-outs, which was more than double Subiaco's rucks combined. Admittedly, they had a pinch hitter, so it was just their ruck and a follow-up, but it was still more than double both of those guys. And not only that, but he was also our third highest possession winner with 20 disposals. And those stats were similar to his dominance last week against the Sharks. So for me, there's no more that Flynn could possibly have done to be demanding a spot back in the AFL side. And at the same time, this is not a knock on Bailey Williams, but I don't think he's made himself, Williams, that is, undeniable enough in the AFL to deny Flynn a chance on the back of Flynn's current form. Which is consistent with what I think McWalter said before the season started, and that was between the two guys, he's just going to pick and choose who's looking the best and who's currently the most in form on a week-to-week basis. But on to the next one, the next best on ground and probably the best looking player out there. I don't mean his attractiveness, but his professional performance was Tyler Brockman. He's just somebody who's just far too good for the level of football he's up against in the WAFL. The speed he was moving at, as well as just the intensity he hit the ball, made it look like he was playing against a bunch of maroon witches' hats out there in the Subiaco Lions, even though I used to play for them back in the day. To be honest, I was a bit surprised he got dropped in the first place, but like Flynn, he's another guy who deserves to be injected straight back into the AFL side next week, and I'd be very surprised if he isn't. After Flynn, and arguably alongside Brockman, was Luca Grego, for performance that is, our first-year player and pick 48. Yes, I'm starting to get my facts right after commenting on Tom Gross last weekend. In a really deep national draft last year, Grego is just a no-frills, really great inside player who last night showed that he's capable of being in the middle of everything. He collected a team-high 23 possessions, which he spread really evenly across the four quarters, which is important, as opposed to just, a burst half. That's a very reliable guy, and for the style that he plays, that's exactly what you want. Unlike Brockman and Flynn, I don't think his performance demands an immediate call-up into the AFL side, although he's on his way, and his performance on Friday night was really the first look at the type of player he's shaping to be for the Eagles, hopefully in the long term. Another really exciting performance came from Malachi Champion. For those who aren't aware, West Coast picked Champion up after the national draft last year through our Next Generation Academy. But to be fair, just having followed it, I'm almost certain that the only reason he didn't go in the draft was because the rest of the competition knew he was coming to us one way or another. And West Coast just basically was able to save that pick for when they could just pull him into the side for free. On Friday night, he demonstrated incredible agility, massive footy IQ that you just can't teach guys, and an ability to finish, which left me thinking that he's already on his way to being the next Willie Rioli, or just another Willie Rioli type player. Not sure when he's going to be finding his way into the side either, but he definitely looks like a guy who will make his way in there eventually. It's his first year and he's already looking the goods. Outside of the guys mentioned, Tim Kelly was definitely in our best players, but probably not to the level you'd expect from a guy who's really meant to walk his way into the AFL side. So I personally wouldn't be surprised if he spends at least one more week in the WAFL, which would be great for the WAFL side. And hopefully his form returns soon so that he can get back to his elite best in the AFL, where we desperately need that version of Tim Kelly back. Finally, Job Shanahan definitely deserved a noteworthy mention. The first-year draftee kicked 3 goals in a very classy, dominant performance up forward. For a kid, he's 19 years old, he already looks above the capability of the WAFL key defenders that he played on, and will just be another quality addition to the AFL side when his time comes. For now, though, we are absolutely stacked for key forwards in the Senior 23. In fact, I think there was a bit of mention about the AFL side probably playing possibly too many over the weekend. So you might just have to have a wait. And in the meantime, it's great for the WAFL side to have that kind of depth trickling down into our twos. So for my key takeaways from the WAFL loss, it's probably worth starting with where I think we did lose the game. And watching how the scoreboard stacked up against the contest, I thought our backline structurally was absolutely terrible in the WAFL. Almost every inside 50 was a score for Subiaco, especially in that last quarter, which we controlled from start to finish. Our players were just constantly out of position there, so it's not really a dig at the individuals playing back as much as the team zone and structure. But if it wasn't for this, I think West Coast could have run away with that win in the fourth quarter, like I mentioned, despite a lot of missed shots on goal over the entire game. Other than that, it's worth noting that for whatever unannounced reason, we'll probably find out on Tuesday at the latest, Beau Allen didn't play, and I don't remember seeing him listed in the AFL emergencies either. So hopefully there's nothing too serious there waiting to be released. But that does lead me straight into my key takeaways, because for the second week in a row, after a really strong preseason, the WAFL squad was very short on midfielders. So just for everyone's information, last week was the first week of the WAFL, and they had a few scratch match hitouts that they won. But then in the opening round of the WAFL, West Coast's AFL round against GWS pulled in 3 mids into the AFL side with only one coming out, and he was injured. That was Elijah Hewitt with a calf complaint. And that just really gutted the WAFL midfield at the last minute. I think it probably swung a few guys into the middle that hadn't been training there. And I just think it's worth mentioning because I don't expect this to be the case all season. Even though we've started the season with two losses, I do believe that 2025 is geared up to be a much more successful one in the WAFL reserves. And with all that said, my key predictions for next week in the WAFL and at the selection table are: the WAFL Eagles will beat the Perth Demons next weekend with a full midfield, including the return of Beau Allen, hopefully because he just came out with something minor, and Tim Kelly making a huge statement in his second game in the twos. Matt Flynn will return to the AFL side. These are just calls, I'm not promising it, and play his best game for the club after a really rocky first 12 months of injuries and being underdone. And then finally, Tyler Brockman will also force his way into the AFL side, possibly at the expense of one of the key forwards that played against Carlton last week that may have left us a little bit tall. But anyway, that wraps up my review of the WAFL Eagles and how the side this week will impact the AFL squad next week. I hope everyone enjoyed this new segment. I'm hoping to be able to squeeze time in for it more regularly. But either way, if you're subscribed to the channel, I'll see you again next weekend. And until then,